Hey, thank you for tuning in. This is an add-on to the Communicate Responsibly podcast project I got going. And I'm doing this because I had some of my friends and people that contacted me when I started the Communicate Responsibly podcast, and they know me, and they said, maybe you should talk a little bit more about where you came up with that name and the background of responsible communication. So here it is. This is an add-on, like I said, to the weekly things I'm going to put out. And I also did one of these about the roots of understanding substance use disorders, also called addictions, because that is part of the background that inspired me to do Communicate Responsibly. I have been working in the field for almost 3 decades. I have been a person in recovery that long too. And one of the things that stands out to me about really all addictive substances is the idea that advertisers try to push out there about they are safe. Sometimes they even say they're healthy if you use them responsibly. As I mentioned in the other video that I did about understanding addiction as a disease, for some folks that doesn't make sense. You cannot use something addictive responsibly when you have a predisposition and your brain chemistry is going to be affected by that substance or behavior in a certain way. You can think of it like an allergy. So if you have a family member that has an allergy to peanuts and you say, well, just eat peanuts responsibly, doesn't make sense. It's a denial of the medical aspect of the disease of substance use disorders. And without denying that, the advertisers would go out of business. So, all that to say that I wanted to spend a little time walking you through this presentation of how advertisers kind of mix the message. They do not communicate responsibly, and they've been doing it for a long time. I pulled some slides from presentations that I have gone into schools. I've gone into community centers. I've gone into places like Department of Social Services. Anyone who is interested in hearing this topic of advertising addiction. And this is kind of a shortened version of an all-day training I would do on this. If you want to hear more, if you think you're working at a place that's interested in this training, please get a hold of me. And I am trying now, I'm only in the second week of doing this. I'm trying to get people to go to my website, First Step Consultation, and I have different pages there along with some contact info. So let's start off with my friend Homer. I love The Simpsons. And I didn't realize, I didn't watch The Simpsons for a long time. I was already an adult when it came out, but the whole thing of adults watching cartoons took me a while to catch on to. I could do a whole podcast on just that. You know, when I grew up, cartoons were for young people. Um, that's changed. And they are hysterical and they are ironic. I think Homer Simpson is one of the most ironic characters in The Simpsons. And this is his saying: to alcohol, the cause of and solution to all of life's problems. You got it, Homer. So let's start. Here are the two sayings that really inspired me. Maybe they really angered me to talk about communicating responsibly. The older ones on the right. Drink responsibly is something the alcohol industry has been using for a long time to deny that alcohol use disorders are a disease or that there are people with alcohol use issues using their substance. The last thing they want you to do is drink responsibly. They want you to buy and consume. I don't know if they care if you consume it. I guess you could buy it and pour it out, but they're really not concerned with this. And we'll see more of this. On the left, we cannot forget addictive behaviors. Woo, those are on the rise in 2026, right? We are more connected than ever. And I don't think that is always a bad thing. I don't put down and trash talk all technology. It's made life much simpler. It's given me the ability to do this. And I love that I can sit inside the PowerPoint now. Um, but they just took the tag from the alcohol company. Yeah, gamble responsibly too. And then they even put in there, it's your best bet. I have seen a lot of people who stopped using substances and ended up with some kind of behavioral addiction. I talk mostly about gambling when I go into schools and when I go do presentations for company or talk with individuals because we have the most research on it. It's legal, but all the other addictive behaviors we see that are on the rise now, including technology, which would include cell phones and which would include other things, video games have been around for a long time. They affect the brain in the same way that gambling does. They affect natural chemicals in an unnatural way. I'll say that one more time. All of this stuff about addiction, whether it's substances or behaviors, affect natural chemicals in your brain in an unnatural way. And again, I spent some time talking about that in the other video. If you want to hear more, go there. So even though they're saying to do these things responsibly, in the 1960s, like I said, cartoons weren't really something made for adults. I remember I grew up in the 70s. Cartoons were only on Saturday mornings. I think they had The Wide World of Disney was maybe Sunday or Monday night too at like 7. Cartoons were a Saturday morning thing. These were the first cartoon characters that they brought into the advertising of beer. The Peels, I think they're brothers, the Peels brothers. My grandparents owned a small general store. I remember seeing this, not knowing who the cartoon characters were, but of course I was kind of attracted to it. Like, hey, what are they? Cigarettes. This is also from the late 1960s, might be early 1970s. Fred and Barney, and I think their wives, whose names escape me right now, loved to smoke Winstons. So you can YouTube old advertisements of the Flintstones smoking cigarettes. They also drank Bush beer. I don't think I have a slide of that in here, but you can find old ads of the Flintstones drinking Bush beer, Winston cigarettes, far back as the late 1960s, early 1970s. Um, if you are from the 1900s like me, you'll remember this guy. I certainly remember these stickers around my grandparents' small convenience store in the 1970s. The Bud Man. Doesn't he look cool? And obviously, 1970s, he didn't look like he was taking any performance enhancing substances, which are also a problem these days. Meant to be funny, meant to be relatable, but certainly a cartoon character. And just in case you were wondering, okay, they're using these cartoon characters, but are they really trying to attract kids? Well, I guess the Flintstones would be a lot of watching. But they had Budman do cool things like here's Budman is skateboarding. They have one, I don't know if I put it in here. Let me see. No, I didn't. But they have one where he has his own boat. He has a helicopter. He looked like he was having a lot of fun and really cool. Let's go back to The Simpsons for a minute. The Simpsons, in case you didn't know what their inspiration for Duffman is, you guessed it, it's Budman. They have just updated him with those performance enhancing muscles and brought him up to date. Anytime they talk about Duff beer, there is an irony in that, kind of like Homer saying that alcohol is the cause of and solution to all the world's problems. Definitely a lot of irony about alcohol use in The Simpsons. So that's where Duffman comes from. Oh, say his name if you know him. I'm covering it down here with my head. Spuds MacKenzie. Came out in the 1980s. I was all about Budweiser and Bud Light in the 1980s. I was a teenager. This advertising was out there. I think I had a t-shirt. I'm pretty sure I had those Converse All-Star high tops, all Budweiser on them. I was all in for this advertising. I thought it was really cool. So, again, we're talking about the mid to late 1980s. I have a couple of Spuds. Here's Spuds McKenzie. They put him on 12 packs around Christmas time. Using animals to advertise addictive substances is something that they tightened down on, but in history, all bets were off. You could use any kind of animal to sell any kind of creature. Think about Joe Camel. If you go back and YouTube the Super Bowl ads, they always had animals. I think Budweiser had frogs at one time. Now they've leaned more toward the Clydesdales, and I'll show you some pictures of that later. But using an animal who used your substance as a, uh, regularly was something that happened all the time. They got some heat from this, so they stopped doing it. You didn't see much of this in the 2000s. However, for our generation, I forget what year this was, but it's a Super Bowl ad. You can YouTube it. It's within the last 10 years. Spuds McKenzie came back from the Netherland, from Pet Cemetery, I guess. And he brought this young man who had thought he was going to stay home studying for the night a rack. I think that's 30. Yeah, I can see it on there. It's not a 12 pack. That's 30 Bud Lights because this guy was being lame. He shouldn't stay home studying. He should go out there. They brought him back. So even though the thing about not using animals was taboo, they got away from it, they push the envelope all the time. You'll see that again. And if right now you're wondering, well, wait a minute, who regulates this advertising? Who says what people selling addictive substances can and can't do? Hold that thought because we're going to get to that. So, something I would talk to people about when I go in is that the alcohol industry is definitely targeting youth. And this makes sense, right? Any business wants to get people who are younger using their product because they will use it for longer in their life. So, as it says here, the younger a person starts drinking, the more likely they will become a pathological drinker. At the time that I was going out and putting on these presentations, you can see at the bottom of the slide, this is 2006. We talked a lot about advertising that you might see magazines or TV, but nowadays just go to one of the alcohol industry websites and you will see how prevalent the advertising is. The only safeguard they have for people going to those sites is you have to put your birthday in before you go in there. I've gone in with several birthdays, and as long as you are over the legal limit, they will let you in. So, yes, the industry is definitely targeting youth. And here are some percentages where you can see 18% of alcohol is consumed by people under the age of 21. And if you're wondering what that 21% is, these are people who the alcohol industry knows have an issue with substance use disorder, primarily with alcohol. And then the 61% they would say are people who are of legal age and do not have a substance use disorder or problems with alcohol. And you may be going, oh, okay, well, those numbers don't seem that high. But check out, again, I'm going back to at least 2018 when I was going around and doing this really regularly. $28.5 billion is going or is coming in from people who already have a substance use disorder. And 21% of that population is $34.2 billion. So, not to belabor this point, folks, why are they doing this? It's all about the money. Money, money, money. Get about the money, money, money. All right. We can move on. And if you're going, yeah, duh, Brian, I am not surprised. This is just a chart that shows you, if I move my head, alcohol ad spending and how high it goes. Look at the numbers that alcohol companies spend on advertising. If we looked at this now in 2026, this is only up to 2011, it's probably gone down because they love the internet. It is much cheaper to advertise on the internet. The other thing that alcohol advertisers are doing more now is getting their product into songs. When I grew up, and again, someone who was in recovery from a substance use disorder, I was always attracted to music that was about drinking. I think of George Thorogood. Um, One bourbon, one scotch, and one beer. I drink alone. But now alcohol companies will get the name of their product in a song. And if you Google search around, you will see just how much they are paid or connected with performers to get the name of that product in a song, especially for those folks who are real popular musical performers among younger people. So, again, don't want to belabor the point. It's all about the money. So, who says what the alcohol industry can and can't do? Is it the federal government? Nope. Is it the state government? Nope. It is these folks, the Distilled Spirits Council of the United States. And their acronym is DISCUSS. I like to call them disgusting. So I didn't know about these folks until I started going into schools and doing some of these presentations about alcohol. True story, I went into a school, just my local school. My kids were still there. I wasn't getting paid. I went in for free because they wanted me to speak to all the health classes. And let's say it was like eighth grade, seventh, eighth grade kids. And I didn't have this exact presentation. I was just talking about the money and the teenage brains. I'll show you some of that after this and how you got to be careful about these things. And a newspaper showed up for that and they took a couple pictures of me. Within a week, these folks from Discuss got in touch with the school I went into and said, you should have contacted us and had Mr. Farr talk to us so that this was more balanced reporting. I was so excited about that. I got in touch with the person uh, that had contacted the school and kind of, low key threatened them. And I said, let's do it. Hey, here I am. Let's go. And I think when they saw my background, they saw what I was doing. I never heard from them again. I do encourage you to Google and find out about these folks because they are something. When you talk about not just making money, but greed, and when you talk not just about communicating irresponsibly, but downright lying, no one does it better. So here's another ad. And again, I don't mean to pick on Anheuser-Busch or Budweiser. There's a few different beer ads, but Budweiser has been around for a long time. They used to, and they still try to, advertise themselves as all American. Anheuser-Busch is not owned by an American company anymore. So there again, looking a little bit deeper into these messages is important. The slide is cut off, but Santa is staring lovingly at a bottle of Budweiser, probably after he has delivered all his goods to the kids. There was nothing that said that alcohol companies could not use Santa, but you saw again that to be the pressure from doing that faded off. So you don't see Santa Claus used anymore in alcohol ads. What you see are the Clydesdales. And you certainly see these Christmassy, warm, wonderful scenes. That's good advertising. It is in no way truthful or honest, but it's good advertising. It'll get people to um, buy your product. And you can see there's also this thing of they go back to the rich heritage, delivering since 1876. In my other video where I talk about the disease of addiction. I talk about prohibition and how that influenced history and how all the rates of problems associated with drinking went down. But we don't really talk about that. We talk about prohibition as a failure. During the prohibition, I don't think I mentioned this in the other video. I know that I think it was Bush Beer started selling soda and they started selling ice cream because people weren't buying their products anymore. What I see a big push for now, and I'm not putting this down either. I'm seeing more alcohol companies come out with zero alcohol. And maybe you've seen this NA. I think that's NA. Not a fan personally, but if other people want to drink that, that is fine. For me, again, just knowing what I know, my five senses, if they taste something that tastes like alcohol, I'm probably going to want the real alcohol. And again, for me, it was never about the taste. Oh, I just love the taste. It was really about the effect. So I think it's very interesting when I talk to people who say, I do home brewing, this is my thing, this is my hobby, because it is a drug. But in the same sense, with wines, there are people who are real connoisseurs of wine and how it goes with food and those kind of things as well. For me, I just don't get it. So I stay away from NA beer, zero alcohol beer. However, I do think it's a nice alternative for people who maybe do like the taste, don't want to get intoxicated. You do you. It's all about doing what you want to do. All right. So, the number one beer of underage people might still be the same. I didn't Google it today, was Bud Light. Underage folks were drinking Bud Light and people around 21, 22, and they wanted to keep that market share. I don't know if you remember this. This is the only time I have seen any kind of public outcry from just the general population about alcohol advertising. When Bud Light started doing the Up for Whatever campaign. And that's what it says here. The perfect beer for removing no from your vocabulary for the night. If you don't remember it, go back and YouTube it. You can look at all these ads they had in 2014. You probably already see the irony of this. When people say no, that means no. So the amount of I can't skirt around it. The amount of sexual abuse and rape that happens after someone has been drinking goes way up, folks. One of the books that is the most powerful that I have read, it's probably in my library here, is called Missoula. And Missoula is about more than just drinking alcohol, sexual abuse, and rape. It's about how the town and the college covered this up when it involved their sports team. And it was males that were raping females. Females were reporting it, and it was going under the radar. I was very struck by that book. I've read several, and I know all the data supports that when alcohol is involved, the number of these offenses happening goes up. I went to hear the speaker of that book. They were in Albany, and they were great. And they talked a lot about people turning a blind eye when this happens, not just to the sexual offense, but the underage drinking that goes on and the messages we give about alcohol. So into that drops Bud Light, and you're up for whatever, and take no out of your vocabulary. It's the only time I have seen a retraction happen so quickly. But they want you to drink responsibly. Remember? I don't think so. Okay. Something else that I don't want to say that I kind of snuck behind the scenes of advertising, but I know some people who are in recovery who work for ad agencies. They're like the real life madmen, and they have done ad campaigns for alcohol companies. Every single alcohol company that adds flavors to their product. Here we have Seagram's. I think that's a wine. We used to call them wine coolers. I've been out of the game since 1996, folks. So whatever those are called now, they make them nice and fruity. And guess the fruit flavors they pick. They pick the ones based on the most popular candies and cereals that young people eat. Surprised? Probably not, but that's how they do it. And again, back in my day when I grew up, there was one flavor of vodka. It was vodka, and it tasted horrible and whiskey. But now, as you'll see in these slides, we got all kinds of flavors. So here, apple cinnamon is the most popular flavor cereal among young people. Let me get my head out of the way. Bud Light came out with some apple Rita. You wouldn't even know from looking at that it was an alcoholic beverage, right? And then check out right there, 8% alcohol. Again, in my other video, I talk about every substance has gotten stronger. Alcohol certainly has. The strongest one is going to sell the most. You don't have to just have that disgusting tasting vodka anymore. You can have s'mores flavor. You can have, these are supposed to be like Pop-Tarts here. You can have cake flavor. You can have loopy. That's supposed to be like Fruit Loops. And the one right behind me, I think, is bubble gum. Yep. So we add flavors to all of these drugs, right? These substances, and say these are for your grandma on gin night. I don't think grandma wants tarts flavored vodka when she has her friends over for gin. Oh, this is one of my favorites. Peanut butter and jelly vodka. Now, I'm not making that up. That's true. It might be off the market now, but they were actually selling that. And then this was when that I remember that weird thing that came out like it's peanut butter jelly time, right? They played on that selling vodka. Drink responsibly and don't drink when you're underage. It's hooey. Here's another one. This is again maybe not the flavors, maybe not going for the cereal, but certainly who's at home playing and I'm not a big game, I'm not a gamer at all. I had like Atari. I remember Atari when that was out, but I never went down this road of other games. So Nintendo. Young people play Nintendo, and of course it's going to be better if you have your beers strapped on there while you play Nintendo. All right. Here's something ironic. Every single sport, the amount of money that is spent on alcohol advertising for every single sport. You'll notice when the season happens, I like watching football. That's probably my favorite sport to watch. I played in high school. We weren't very good, but it was fun. Um, there will actually be a team name that Coors, well, you can see Coors has New York Giants right there. They will pay for that team name. Here we have New York Yankees with Budweiser. So much money. The idea that somehow sports and let's call it what it is, drugs and getting intoxicated go together is so uniquely American and it's been so twisted by the alcohol companies, and we just buy it. Sure, gonna go to sports and do some parking lot drinking before I go in there. And this is my most ironic one, right behind me. Let's put it right on a race car. That's a great idea. Let's have NASCAR that is sponsored by there. I think it's Miller Lite. But you see a lot of NASCAR cars that have alcohol emblems on them. Are you starting to kind of see it doesn't make any sense? The World Cup, when Budweiser said we are going to sponsor the World Cup, this was somewhere in South America when I went around and did this. In case you didn't know, you can check the history here. Wherever this was held, they said we don't serve alcohol here because in the past there's been violence. It happens when people are drinking. There's been riots, and Budweiser said if you do not serve Budweiser, we're not going to give you your money. So guess what? that year, alcohol was served at the World Cup. I don't think there were any riots, but money. Money, money, greed, greed, all of this stuff. Drink responsibly is the last thing on their minds. Oh, these are good too. So now, when I get done working out, what's the first thing I go for? I go for my Michelob Ultra. And on this side, in case you hadn't guessed, if I move my head, that's Lance Armstrong. I think the story of Lance Armstrong is very sad when you talk about addictions and you talk about someone that was so pressured with steroids and performance enhancing drugs, how he got involved with the Cancer Society and started a thing off, Live Strong, that just has helped so many people. So I have a hard time singling out anyone who has had those struggles in their life and being like, you are a bad person, you are morally bankrupt. I work with people who I think always can change if they want to change. It's interesting that they have Lance Armstrong as the spokesperson for Michelob Ultra, though. So working out and drinking at the same time. It's almost like they push these things to the point they go, you think they'll believe this? No, this is way too ridiculous. We got alcohol on a NASCAR and it's racing around. And then people go, yeah, okay, well, I'll do that. The more we go along, the more we kind of don't question these things, the more ridiculous it gets. So, yes, you can exercise and work out. I had mentioned this before, but just in case you're wondering, the more exposure to alcohol advertising that young people have, the more they are going to drink. And exposure isn't just, I got to get rid of the old school watching TV. It can be popping up when they are online. It can be in the music they're listening to. It can be when they go to see their favorite band. Where I live, there is an outdoor venue close by. It's sponsored, or Live Nation are the ones who run it. I can't believe the amount of alcohol advertising there. Not to mention, my wife sometimes will have a drink when we go. It's almost $20 for one drink. What? So yeah, it's off the hook. So, young people, the more exposure they have, the more normalized this is, the more they are susceptible. And if you've never heard of this, I talk about it in the other video too. Young people's brains don't fully form until around age 25. That I've seen different studies, but that seems to be ish 25. Along that way, what happens in your head, if you've heard of all the neurons, you've heard of these connections, pruning takes place. Why can't you remember your locker combination? Or maybe you can. That's pretty impressive if you can. But short-term memory, long-term memory, our brain is such an amazing computer. And it needs natural kind of food like water and healthy foods to keep it running. When you put a toxin in there, and alcohol is the number one toxin that affects every single cell in the body, things don't go like they should. So, especially during adolescence, this thing called synaptic pruning, where older stuff is kind of cut off, you're not using that anymore, you're going into adulthood and you're going to learn some new things, that can be severely affected. That's what they're showing you here. If you're interested, you can look up some more. And this is just a picture to show you what happens to brain growth over time. As I said, they have age 20 here, but the brain isn't fully formed till around age 25. The longer we can keep young people from using or developing a problem with toxic substances, the better, the more chance their brain has of forming in a natural way. And then I think I got one. Yeah, this is the last one of this slide. It's about alcohol in the teenage body. Just gives you all kinds of things. As these organs are growing, it's going to stunt that growth. It's going to affect, like I said before, every single cell in the body. I've talked mostly about alcohol here. We could say the same thing about nicotine, though. And if you want to hear more about nicotine, cigarettes, vaping, chew, that's in the other video as well. My main purpose here was to really question that idea of communicating responsibly. In my year-long podcast, I do believe that the way we communicate, call things out, speak truth to power, we do have a choice over, right? We can have responsible communication. But the name did come as kind of this ironic twist on alcohol companies, gambling, saying, do this responsibly. Doesn't work for everybody. All right, that's it for today. If you enjoyed this, I hope you do. I'm supposed to ask you to subscribe. I'm trying to get a big number of followers. I'm not even sure what I'm going to do with that. My main goal here, folks, is to get this message out to as many people as possible. We're in a place where it's a little bit scary, and I think us people who have been sitting in the background wondering what we can do, you all bring something to the game. Start talking about the things you know. Start talking about the things that may help other people. That's why I'm here, and I hope to hear from you, and I hope you keep following me in the future. Check out First Step Consultation, and you can get my contact information there. Thanks, folks.